WKRO 217, your news for Nowhere.
Good evening, Nowhere. This is Silas Caudwell, your charming comrade for the creepy. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a regular, congratulations on making it through another night. Don't get cocky, not everyone does. Now, before we dig into tonight's little tale, let's start with a few community notes. First up, a friendly reminder from our athletic bunch at the Nowhere Hiking Club. They want everyone to know mushroom season is in full bloom, or full sprout, whatever those little tasty devils do. I digress, but if you're out foraging this weekend and you spot some particularly vibrant specimens of the neon variety, just walk away. Especially if you notice you're being watched while you're picking. The club's lost 2 members this season, both experienced foragers who went off-trail scavenging for those exotic fungi. Search teams found their baskets full of ordinary mushrooms, but the foragers themselves? Well, let's just say those shiny caps aren't the only things glowing in the deep woods, because if you see neon eyes watching you from the undergrowth, you've found the owner of those tempting delicacies. And they don't appreciate trespassers in their garden. Moving on, this Saturday marks the annual Miners Union Memorial in downtown Dayton. The union will be holding this event to honor the 27 workers who disappeared during the cavern collapse of 42 inside Dayton Mine. Join us to pay your respects with all due reverence, but don't trust any of the voices you may hear coming from the shaft. Any whispers suggesting the men down there are still alive are probably lying to you. All right, folks, that's it for announcements this week. The producers are letting me know it's time to move on to our men's story, but first, a word from our sponsor.
Tonight's episode is brought to you by Bright Bite Toothpaste, the only toothpaste clinically proven to make your smile shine so bright, strangers will be temporarily blinded by your pearly whites. Other brands promise you'll get whiter teeth, fresher breath, and maybe even a soulmate when you use their product. Bright Bite doesn't do that. It just gives you teeth so bright, people will ask you if you're storing LED lights behind your molars. What's the secret? Crushed Sperolium Extract. Don't ask what that is or where it's from. The lawyers had me sign an NDA. Just take my word, this stuff fights gingivitis with the added bonus of a nightlight. And don't panic, it's probably safe. But if it isn't, well, you'll still have the best smile at your open casket funeral. Bright Bite Toothpaste. Brush in the day to glow in the dark at night.
Before we begin, if you adore accounts of the strange and creepy, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. And give this video a like. This allows the algorithm that rules our world to feed you what's most delicious. Let's get on to tonight's main event. Many of you locals are probably already familiar with the Verity Emerald Mine. But did you know emeralds don't belong in Nowhere County? They shouldn't grow here, but they do in Verity, and we don't know why. Geologically speaking, they shouldn't exist in this part of the country at all. Emeralds form under very specific conditions. Grellium, chromium, the right kind of rock, the right temperature, and pressure. Nowhere County has none of those things. Yet in 1891, a prospector named Ashley Johnson struck the richest emerald vein anyone had ever seen right here in what became known as Verity Mine. Now, Ashley wasn't a stupid man. He knew something was wrong. The stones were too perfect, too green. But Ashley had 8 children and a wife with consumption. He needed the money. So he took just one emerald, just one, back to town to have it appraised. The jeweler confirmed it was genuine, worth a small fortune. Ashley went home a happy man, told his whole family their troubles were over. They celebrated that night with lamb chops, potatoes, and even wine. By morning, he wasn't quite right though. His spine had curved and hunched forward like he'd aged 50 years overnight. His fingers had elongated, the nails thickened, and his eyes bulged out of his skull. Meanwhile, Ashley's wife's hair had fallen out. Her skin had turned sallow and paper thin, and their youngest child started crawling instead of walking, his joints bending in ways that were unnatural. All this came from a diary record from Ashley's neighbor, Sarah, who found the house empty one morning. The family had disappeared, forever gone, in the night. She believed they went back into the caverns, and Nowhere sealed that mine in 1942 after 16 miners went missing in what officials called the cavern collapse. But folks who live near Verity know better. There was never a collapse. The men just went deeper. Now, tonight's caller knows that temptation firsthand. Her name's Naomi. She and 2 friends thought they'd take a weekend trip, squeeze into those abandoned shafts, and pocket enough emerald to change their lives. Only Naomi came back. Naomi, welcome to WKRO 217.
Hi, Silas.
I've got a curious question to start us off. What compelled you all to enter Verity? It's been closed for decades, deemed unsafe and not worth the money spent to mine it.
I don't really know how to say this without sounding like an idiot. We knew what we were doing was illegal. We knew the sign said closed, unsafe conditions. We still went in. We thought we had it under control. See, I was bleeding money at the time. Between rent, my car loan, and not having enough to cover my mom's medical bills, I could barely think straight. And Kelso, he's the kind of guy who thinks luck can be bought and goes all in at the casino. The kind of guy who's 3 paychecks behind because of stupid, impulsive buys, but also the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back. And Tessa. She had just lost her second waitressing job after the diner cut hours. She's got a kid and a stack of daycare bills that don't wait for maybe next month. We were all desperate. That's the honest truth.
Okay, that's a why I can understand. So tell us the how.
We obviously picked the Verity mine because of the emeralds, or at least the rumors of the emeralds. Growing up, every kid in school knew it was a treasure trove, but none of us went in because the kids stupid enough that did never came back. Many think it's cursed, but at the time, Kelso, Tess, and I figured it was just a rumor to keep people out. Anyway, I brought bolt cutters in case we needed to get through any locks, and Tessa brought the rope to guide us back out. Kelso had the buyer hookup, some rando from a gambling group chat he was in. He said he'd take the raw stones off our hands, no questions asked, and for good cash, too. That was all the prepping we felt we needed to do before all this. Kelso kept saying, just this once. We get in, we get out, we pay our debts off, and then we can breathe.
How hard was it getting into the mines?
Unfortunately, surprisingly easy. There weren't even locks or chains, so we didn't even need the bolt cutter. Just a few signs that said the mine was closed and no trespassing.
And may I add, don't get any idea, folks. As a reminder, these stories rarely end up going well.
Yeah, learn from me. We haven't even gotten to the insane part yet. Anyway, inside was colder than I imagined. It was damp and tight and the air tasted metallic like pennies, which did give us pause until we caught a glint of green dust on the walls. We had barely started our journey inside and thought we were already striking gold.
Or rather emeralds in this case.
We thought we'd just grab what we could near the entrance, but the dust, it pulled us in deeper. When we ran our lamps across the stone, little motes lifted, like sparks were shaken from coal. The deeper we went, the thicker it got. The dust turned into a trail, and that trail a glittering green path leading further down. Kelso was the first to say it. It's showing us where the big stuff is.
And was it?
Well, first the tunnels twisted us further down into the belly of the cavern. The further we went, the more there was in the mine's seams, like veins glowing faintly on their own. We didn't even need our headlamps at one point. The walls were casting their own light. And then we found it. The cavern opened up wide enough that our voices echoed, and the walls were alive with emerald. Every surface was studded with green crystal. Jagged shards jutted out in every direction. The floor, the ceiling, whole pillars of green rose up like columns holding up a coliseum.
Sounds entrancing.
Oh yeah, Kelso fell to his knees and got to work immediately. He pulled out a hammer from his bag and crudely just started chipping away at the wall.
What did you do?
I remember thinking it didn't look real. It didn't look like anything that Earth should have made. It looked placed, like somebody built it and left it there and then forgot about it. Something about it all felt unnatural to me, and I just stood there while Tessa and Kelso threw as many emeralds in their bags as possible. I think that might be the one thing that made the biggest difference. I never touched the things.
You say things as though they weren't emeralds.
Anything that makes people act like that aren't normal. So no, I don't believe they were.
Act like what exactly?
So at first it looked like they just lost themselves in the moment, but the more they touched the emeralds, the more wrong it got. Kelso's palms started to bleed from the shards, but he didn't stop shoving them into his bag. His hands looked so bad the stones were covered in his blood. I tried to get him to wrap his palms, but he snarled at me. Actually snarled, like a dog protecting its food. And Tessa, she pressed her cheek against the wall like she'd wanted to feel the crystals against every inch of her skin. And then she began humming to herself. I didn't recognize it, but it was eerie. And then she scraped her nails down the wall hard enough that they split. She didn't flinch. She just kept saying, "There's more inside. There's more inside." Then their eyes started to change. My headlamp caught the reflection of them. Both of their pupils were pinpricks swallowed up by this bright green sheen. I told them we had more than enough, and it was time to go. That we needed to leave. But they didn't even acknowledge me at this point. Well, that's actually not true. They did laugh. It was broken and hollow, almost like a cackle that echoed around the tunnel, and then they went further into the cavern.
Did you follow them?
I didn't want to, but I did. I couldn't just leave my friends behind. Their collection of emeralds got thicker the deeper we went, but so did the air.
What do you mean?
That the air was stale and heavy. I don't know how else to explain it. It was just oppressive.
When did you all finally stop going down?
When Kelso started coughing. It sounded like the dust was choking him, until he pulled his hand away from his mouth, and flecks of emerald dust were covered in his palm instead of mucus. They were tiny, glittering specks that glistened with blood. He looked at me and grinned with green dust in his teeth. He said, "Guess I'm worth something after all." I looked to Tessa for her reaction, but she just stared at him. I remember noticing the whites of her eyes weren't white anymore. They were cloudy and a pale green, like river glass. And when she smiled at me, her gums were bleeding. I told them we had to go back at this point. That just hung in the air and went ignored. Kelso dropped his bag and went back to work on the walls. This time without the hammer, he just used his hands. He ripped at the stones and bled all over himself and the walls. Then Tessa began to sway back and forth as though she was dancing. She started humming that weird tune again and said something like, "They're singing to me. They love me."
Could you hear anything?
Yeah, sorta. It was like a soft hum or melody. It was weak, but there. I couldn't make any words out, and I didn't have the time to decipher it.
Why's that?
Because Kelso grabbed my attention again. He reached out toward me with a wide grin and said, "Just touch it. Just once. You'll see it feels like electricity running through your veins." Then Tessa's head lolled to the side, and she reached out too, and she giggled and said, "It wants you to join us." They moved closer, both of them, and their eyes were burning green at this point. Kelso reached for my wrist and guided my hand toward the wall, but I snatched it away. My stomach turned, like I felt physically ill. They both tilted their heads at me in perfect unison. And that's when I ran.
Did you know how to get out?
No, but I sure as hell knew I wasn't going to stay there anymore. I booked it in the direction we'd come in and did my best not to touch anything. I kept following the tunnel path that had the least amount of emeralds.
Did your friends keep following you?
Short answer, yes. But as a correction, what had followed me were not my friends. I wouldn't even call them human.
And why's that?
They're lax. They just bounced off the walls like sharp and broken nails against a chalkboard. Dozens of them chasing me. It wasn't human. Also, their footsteps sounded too heavy.
Too heavy?
Like stones. Stone against stone. I don't know how else to describe it.
Okay, so they kept running after you and...
I turned a corner too sharp and I slammed into the wall. For a split second, I froze, sure my skin had touched the emeralds. Sure, it was over. But it was my backpack that hit first, the straps taking most of the scrape. My jacket sleeve dragged across the crystals, and it shredded the fabric, but My bare arm never touched it. I couldn't stand there and overthink it. Kelso and Tessa were gaining on me at this point, and I had to keep course.
Had you seen any sight of the exit?
Not yet. First was a narrow tunnel, and that forced me to turn sideways and shimmy through. We had taken this path on the way in, so I knew the exit was close, but I had to get through this first. It was an excruciating task, making sure I didn't touch the walls while going as fast as I could. But then I saw it, a seam of daylight streaming in through a half-collapsed passage. I made it through the rest of the tight pass and ran harder. My legs screamed and my lungs burned, but I forced myself forward. Behind me, Kelso and Tessa's laughter broke into snarls, and they were close. I swear when I look back just for a second, they were crawling on all fours and their limbs were bent all wrong. But then I was finally out. The cold air hit me first as I scrambled into the light. I was coughing and gagging, but I had made it out.
Did Kelso and Tessa follow you out?
No, they stayed in the shadows of the tunnel. They didn't want to follow me in the light. They just watched from inside.
How long were you there for?
I took a moment to gather myself, but then I got the hell out of there. They began to chant, saying, "Deeper, deeper, come back." I couldn't stand it. I didn't even call the police until I made it back into town.
Naomi, before we let you off the line, we've got listeners out there who'll hear your story and think, I'd be smarter. I'd stop before it got bad. I'd just take one stone. You've been down there. You've seen what happens. What advice would you give to anyone tempted to Verity?
It's not worth it. It doesn't matter how careful you think you'll be or how desperate you are for money. Greed isn't something you can measure. It starts as one stone or one shard or just enough, but it'll consume you. Verity doesn't let you stop. It pushes you. It makes you want more until the wanting is all that's left.
Strong words, darling. Thank you. Now, listeners, take note. The only emeralds in this town comes with a bill you can't afford. But leave us a comment if, given what Naomi experienced, you'd rate Verity Mine just the same. Naomi's friends chased fortune till it hollowed them out. Don't allow yourself to be hollowed out too. This is Silas Caudwell reminding you not every fortune is worth the finding.